Hello, everyone. It's Chris Kelly here with the Fountain Report. I am pleased to be with Dr. Karen Shenoy, who's joining us today, who is the Chief Veterinary Officer for Hills Pet Nutrition. We're going to talk shelters. So, welcome, Dr. Shenoy.
Thank
Glad to
you.
have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Oh, I am too. I've been looking forward to this. So, let's get started. We'll jump right in. In 2024, Hills State of the Shelter Pet Adoption Report offers a valuable look at consumer perceptions of shelter adoption. How does this data complement the information provided by the shelter animals count? And what picture does it paint of the current landscape?
Yeah, the Shelter Animals Count organization has done a really nice job of helping to standardize data collection across shelters that are in the US. And they're focusing on looking at things like intakes into shelters, length of stay for pets in the shelter, outcomes coming out of shelters, what is the outcome with the animals. And we've worked closely with them to both help them advance the work that they're doing and also recognize that what would be very meaningful to shelters is to also have further data around what's happening in the communities around them. That was really kind of an open white space, if you will, that shelters we found could use more data around perceptions, barriers to adoption, what those consumer perceptions are. And so the data that we now have that we've shared in our second annual State of Shelter Pet Adoption Report is very complementary to the Shelter Animals Count data and helps to provide some of those additional actionable insights for shelters. Most notably, we're seeing that shelters are at or above capacity for the fifth year in a row. And so you can understand why this data is so meaningful to the shelters because they really need to be able to take steps to help influence greater outcomes and get more pets adopted into loving homes.
Sure, makes sense. So, the most recent shelter animals count analysis showed a 2% increase in cat adoptions in 24 versus 23, kind of following trends that we're seeing everywhere.
Yeah.
What factors are contributing to this positive trend for cats?
Yeah, just as you're mentioning here, we are seeing that cats are really kind of having a moment everywhere. And in the shelter animals count data, they compared both pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic trends. So seeing a 2.7% increase in cat adoptions now post-pandemic. And also, I think I failed to mention that in January, they released their full year data for 2024. In that data, they showed a 1.8% increase in cat adoptions in 24 over 23. So continuing to see that trend. And we found that in the shelter report, which is a survey that we did of 2,500 respondents from across the US from socioeconomically diverse backgrounds, that 40% of people said they would be interested in adopting a cat in the future. We found when we kind of asked specifically about that, things that you won't necessarily find surprising, that they perceived cats to be less maintenance, that it's to some degree the adopter's personal preference. We know cat people are unique and not necessarily the same as dog people per se. And they also really emphasize that cats groom themselves, that they require less space. They're perceived as easy keepers versus dogs. Also, we have another report that's coming out soon. It's the World of the Cat report from Hills Pet Nutrition, and it's a compilation of different facts and information around cats kind of from a veterinary lens and what's happening with cats in the moment. And it was really interesting to see in that report, there were things like a highlight around the number of cat-focused veterinary texts that have come out in the last 6 years. 12 new cat-focused vet textbooks, to be specific. So again, cats are having a moment. We're seeing it in the shelter data. We're seeing it from the veterinary side. It's kind of exciting to see cats get the attention that they deserve.
Sure. So, in light of the increased number of cat adoptions, what would you say are the important considerations for veterinary professionals?
Yeah, talking more specifically about veterinary professionals, again, this Hills World of the Cat report outlines that about 40% of cats visit the veterinarian typically each year, and that I think varies in some of the data that we see out there, but that's as compared to dogs, where it's more like 82% of dogs that visit the vet. So a pretty substantial gap there. I think veterinary professionals everywhere realize that we have an opportunity to get more cats receiving veterinary care. I also wanted to highlight another really interesting stat out of the 2024 AVMA Pet Ownership and Demographics Source Book. They state that more than a quarter of cat owners described that they had no annual household spending on veterinary care, whereas for dogs, it was about half of that number. So it's a really substantial number of cat owners, sadly, that are not, seeking support from a veterinary professional. And so I think we all recognize there's an opportunity for veterinary clinics to tailor their marketing efforts towards those cat owners that are out there. And really, if we have a cat that's coming into the practice as a newly adopted animal, it's so critical in that moment in time where you've got the attention of the cat owner to really outline the importance of preventive care, the role of veterinary care in helping cats live a longer, healthier life. You've really kind of got to treat that as a very precious moment where you can get that information across to cat owners because they're just not coming in for care like we see with dogs.
Okay, so we're seeing an increase in cat adoptions. Large dogs, unfortunately, are experiencing longer stays in shelters. Can you tell me more or tell us more about the trend behind this data?
Transitioning from cats over to large dogs, in the shelter animals count data, we saw some pretty interesting information around length of stay. Pre-pandemic, 2019 data showed an average length of stay of 11 days, whereas in the 2024 data, it was nearly double. 20 days was the average length of stay for a large dog. We found in our report that fewer than 1 in 4 people are open to the thought of adopting a larger dog. And again, the challenges that you see there are maybe not things that we wouldn't expect. So people cite difficulty traveling with their large dog. Housing restrictions are a big one, that depending on your housing circumstances, you may not be able to fit a dog in your space or may not even be allowed to have a larger dog. And again, they take up too much space as a perception. What I did see as a very hopeful stat was when we looked at generational differences, Gen Z statistically is actually quite open to adopting larger dogs as compared to other generations. And so more in that age group than others said that they would likely adopt a larger dog in the future. The downside, or kind of the thing that is going to make that take a little time to come to fruition, is that we know only around 25% of them are currently homeowners. And so those housing restrictions are obviously heightened with that younger generation.
Sure. So, what barriers are most significant when it comes to pet adoption and ownership of pets?
Well, we've been hearing a lot about the cost of care, cost of veterinary care, cost of food. Those were all things that rose to the top in the list in our survey. We also saw that adopting a pet was less accessible for pet owners who make less than $75,000 or less per year. And that really is quite a high threshold. When you look at the 2023 census data, in the US, the real median household income was just over $80,000. So there's a sizable portion of the population out there where pet ownership is a real challenge in terms of the cost. We do know that many shelters, veterinary clinics, a lot of different community organizations out there are focused on helping to bridge that gap. And so there's things like low-cost veterinary care support, pet food pantries that are examples of work that's being done. And in the State of Shelter Pet Adoption report, we showcase some really specific best practices, some of the work that's being done largely on the shelter side to help overcome some of these challenges.
Great. So let's talk about post-adoption support. How do veterinary professionals play a role in this? What are your thoughts there?
Again, another one of my favorite stats from the report. Remarkably, 94% of pet owners who were considering relinquishment kept their pet after receiving support. And we know that very often it's a veterinary professional that's providing that support. They really tend to lean on pet owners or on veterinarians for support around behavior and health concerns, which were some of the larger concerns when we asked about why somebody might be looking to relinquish their pet. Out of those who did surrender their pet, 2 out of 3 said that intervention would have helped them be able to keep their pet. So we have a big role to play as veterinary professionals in helping to support pet owners. We, I think, need to help them when they are post-adoption and perhaps going through a period of anxiety around having the pet in the house. I think we need to recognize that it's fun and exciting at first, but then there can be some of these challenges that they face, and we need to normalize conversations around what is bringing them a little bit of an anxious feeling around the relationship with the new pet. What challenges are they facing? How can we help support them and point them towards resources, whether that's in the local shelter and other places or within things that we can do in our practices specifically as well.
Great. So let's look ahead. What key areas will the 2025 Hills State of the Shelter Pet Adoption Report focus on?
We will have another iteration of the report coming out this summer. So the 2025 report is going to include an increased focus on kittens and on fostering. And those are areas that Shelter Animals Count is focused on as well. We know that some of the data does not fully capture all the neonates, all the kittens that are necessarily in the care of shelters. And similarly for the fostering animals that are out there in foster care, it's a little bit less objective data around fostering and some of the opportunities and what's happening in that area. So we're kind of digging into that in more detail. And we're excited to continue this work uncovering different data gaps. We hope that the shelter report continues to be an impactful source of data both for veterinary professionals and for shelter professionals alike.
Great. So last question. Where can veterinary professionals go for more information and resources on the work that you're doing?
3 great resources I would point everyone towards. One is the Hills 2024 State of Shelter Pet Adoption Report, which is available at hillspet.com/shelter, and we'll have a renewed version of that report out in the summer of 2025. We also have the 2025 Hills Pet Nutrition World of the Cat Report. It's available now at hillsvet.com. And then lastly, I'd point everybody towards the Hills-sponsored American Animal Hospital Association Community Care Guidelines. Those are available on the AHA website and another really great resource with lots of ideas around reaching out into the community and tapping into different resources that might be of use to you and your clients.
Fantastic. Congratulations on all the good work that you're doing. I know this comes out with fanfare every year, and we're glad to be a part of helping you get that message out. Thanks for joining us today.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.